our colleague Ron Joy Banerjee is now in conversation with Anand Mahindra. Ron?
Yes, coming our continued coverage here on Vibrant Gujarat continues, and with me, alongside me, is Mr. Anand Mahindra. We need to be a little loud, Mr. Mahindra, because the band is in full swing here.
I wanted to appreciate how you've arranged this band for our interview. It's wonderful.
Well, what would we not do to have you with us? A lot has happened, Mr. Mahindra, since the last time we spoke. That was in June. It was incidentally in London. Brexit happened, and Donald Trump's remarkable victory and demonetization back home. And I'll talk about demonetization in just a bit. But as far as these two events were concerned, both were sort of fought on anti-immigration, anti-globalization plank. What does it really, what are the risks for a country like India, especially when we are trying to increase our export footprint, trying to be a part of the global supply chain?
Well, let me take your question about the immigration and the H-1B visa issues. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the H-1B situation could be India's Y2K all over again. It looks like a threat at this point, but keep in mind, people are going to still want IT services. What they will do simply is offshore them. So if we cannot get H-1B visas, it does not mean India, as the back office to the world, is under threat. It will actually mean that Indian IT companies' margins may in fact improve, because offshoring is less expensive. I recall many years ago when Tech Mahindra was compelled by British Telecom to reduce its on-site presence. We took it as a threat, and it actually turned out to improve our operations, improve efficiency, and to improve margins. So let's look at this as an opportunity.
You actually preempted my question, sir, because just recently, last week, the Congress reintroduced a bill on H-1B visa, again talking about a minimum wage, $100,000 from $60,000. That's a 40% increase. So you don't feel IT industry, in a sense, is going to be, it's going to be as much impacted as some of the other sectors?
It's going to be an adjustment. I referred to this example of how Tech Mahindra then offshored a lot of its work for British Telecom. There was an adjustment and a transition, but at the end of it all, we all came out winners. And I'm seeing this as a massive opportunity for India to even further embrace digital working and to provide services to the rest of the world over fiber.
Over fiber. What about the manufacturing side, Mr. Mahindra? Because we've seen Donald Trump's rhetoric, and he's taking on Mexico at this stage, but it's just going to be a matter of time, before India may also be sort of, part of his target list, so to speak, because many global OEMs, they are making India as a sort of a regional export hub at this stage. Who knows, later it could be in the US, and companies like you are looking at a larger US play. Clearly there are downside risks to the global economy.
I don't know why you're so worried about President-elect Trump. He has a love affair going with India, isn't it? That's
so
what he says.
As of now.
And so let's take him at his word that he believes India are the good guys. I don't think he's going to do anything to jeopardize India's position with the US, particularly its trading posture. In fact, I think given his apprehensions over China, I'm sorry, I'm beginning to sound like a terminal optimist, but I see an opportunity here too. Is this where India gets an opportunity to catch up to China in its trading posture with the US, simply because of Mr. Trump's apprehensions about China? As far as multinational companies like ours are concerned, you have to be all over. You cannot say that I am simply going to make in India and export and then claim you're a multinational. So as you know, we have 5 assembly locations for our tractors in the US.
Yeah.
That will make Mr. Trump very happy. The Gen Z electric scooter that we have incubated and designed was designed in California, made in Michigan. Going to make him very happy again. So I think we've hedged our bets globally, which is what a multinational company should do.
Talking about your optimism, in June when we spoke, you said how the future for India looked propitious. But when we look at the data, it's giving us mixed signals. We have the IIP data on one hand, which are far from satisfactory, but you have the indirect tax revenues, which are going up. So it's hard to sort of reconcile this, the contradictory trend in data. What's your reading of the Indian economy? Are you still sort of holding on to?
Without being lighthearted at all, this is unprecedented. What has happened here? There are no precedents which we can go by and say this is what the roadmap will be, this is how the economy will get affected or not. I'm just reading the tea leaves. I'm reading the signs, and I've, in fact, gone public over it that I was very pleasantly surprised by the retail sales in December. And I'm talking about retail. A lot of people have said, well, didn't you have some minor reduction in growth? That was an inventory.
Where manufacturers have to do a lot of heavy discounts to make it worthwhile for...
Everybody used to say December was a bad month. So I'm only talking about year on year. Let's just look at the year-on-year figures. Retail sales were quite buoyant compared to the kind of apprehensions people had. So I'm seeing signs of revival, to be honest, far earlier than anyone had anticipated. And I've talked to people, to our outlets in places as far-flung as UP and also in the south. And everywhere I'm seeing that people are making the transition far quicker than I would have expected. Even in agriculture, in tractors, if you looked, our sales were up 9%.
Yeah.
So,
it's a remarkable year for tractors.
So I think... I have to admit, I'm talking about large companies, I'm talking about the organized sector. So demonetization, apart from improving transparency, improving the traceability, is also, interestingly, resulting in a move from the unorganized to the organized sector. And that,
because what has it strengthened the already strong?
Yes,
is that...
wherever we in our new businesses were competing with the unorganized sector, we are suddenly finding an advantage. It's like the used car business, our spares unit is reported higher sales. I cannot talk on behalf of SMEs. You would know better than me about how they are making the transition. But I think this is one of those cases where people look around and say, hey, this is not as bad as I thought it was. And then everyone joins the bandwagon and the consumer sentiment gets talked up again. I wouldn't be surprised if we'll see happier days sooner than what most people are thinking.
You were optimistic right from the first day. In fact, you were one of the first, I think, industries to come out openly and sort of, back the move, saying, if all you robbers, if you have robbed the bank, you just got robbed. That's what you said. But then again, talking about the SMEs and the medium-sized enterprises, and recent report has come out by the Manufacturers Association, which claims to be the largest, by the way, Mr. Mahindra, and they've said 30% job loss, 50% top-line decline. And the question that many are asking, that while it's hard to fault the intentions of the government, more digitization, but at what cost? I mean, how long can businesses sort of endure, small and medium enterprises endure the short-term pain for future gains?
An American private equity person came in and saw me. He's seen me a couple of times over the last few months, and he said, I'm surprised. In any other country, there'd be rioting on the streets by now. You look at Venezuela or wherever. Why isn't there? Clearly, we have to. It's not because we are a passive nation. The question, obviously, the answer, obviously, is that people are adjusting. And that there is, in my opinion, a massive transfer of wealth. Even as people are complaining about accounts being misutilized or that farmers are using their accounts, you know what? Government can't say this. I can. So what? If they're doing that, this is a massive transfer of wealth from the people who had money that was unaccounted, using accounts. Now, the government has to take a posture that this is illegal, it shouldn't be allowed. All I'm saying is, let me be very practical. There's a massive transfer of wealth. All of those people are using their status and their account for being recipients of currency. So I'm actually being very practical and saying, you know what? It is actually a quantitative easing.
A quantitative easing.
It is, at the bottom of the pyramid. So I'm, in fact, telling you that 3-4 months from now, when people say, you know what, I made a little money on this transition, I'm going to start spending it, you may be surprised by the spending surge that comes from rural areas.
And you're expecting that?
I'm not expecting anything. Nobody has any kind of certainty. I'm saying we build scenarios. And this is a scenario that the government cannot talk about. But I'm saying, so what is wrong? There's been a massive transfer of wealth.
A couple of last things, Mr. Mahindra. Then, I know you're not a big fan of the budget per se. You say that it's what the government does in the remaining 364 days of the year and not that one day. But still,
you have a very good memory, Ronald.
I do, Mr. Mahindra. And, and the fact is that, it is still an important event. It is also a larger signal that the government gives out to the rest of the world. Expectations, what are you hoping for?
I am going to stay true to my convictions. I am no budget soothsayer. I deal with the outcomes as they happen, and I try to spend time analyzing them. I think it's very inappropriate to even make comments on the day of the budget because the small print is important. The devil lies in the details. So I observe a Maun Vrat during the budget period right up to it and in the week after and until I fully understood it.
Right.
So you'll have to forgive me for not being
Fair enough,
forthcoming.
Mr. Mahendra. You know, talking about corporate tax rates, because you have got Donald Trump who's promised 15 to bring it down to 15% from 35%. When you have the largest economy in the world doing that, I mean, won't it put more pressure on countries like India to follow suit?
Oh,
Because
I would love that.
You would-
I would love that, and I would certainly say that
you
the
would back Donald Trump's, idea in a sense. Okay, let's not take Donald
I don't know
Trump.
where you brought
Let's not take
Donald Trump into this. I have no clue.
Listen, he has proposed that in the US, and he's promised, not
Yeah,
proposed
but
yet.
don't sneak up on me about views of Donald Trump via income tax. I'm saying cutting income tax is a good thing. And especially when you have greater transparency and traceability, I think the government, in my opinion, would be inclined to reward now those who are transparent with a lower rate of tax.
In conclusion, what does Anand Mahindra announce today in Gujarat? You've been here at this Gujarat summit plenty of times before.
No, we are not
Any
melodramatic people. We are not people who unfortunately live up to your
So
expectations
what are you
of
going
making
to
big bank
go
announcements.
meet the Prime Minister soon for lunch in a short while? What will be any piece of advice or?
Advice to the Prime Minister? No, I'll ask his advice and then I'll tell you what
He would certainly turn to you and people like you to.
Well,
gauge.
if I was even privileged enough to have that conversation with him, I would do him the honor of keeping it confidential.